So everybody has a handout. I'm going to go ahead and just read the introduction. So everybody does have a handout, right? I'm hearing like weird things in my ear again, so I don't know. Just a minute ago, I heard like a strange rumble. Did y'all hear that too? The last trump. The voice of the archangel. It's funny. What a mercy. I guess when you get 17 chapters into Revelation, you might start hearing things and seeing things, At one point, John here in this text tonight, he was like, I didn't know what I just saw. So anyway, let's go with the introduction. Chapters 17 and 18 really continue the 7 bowl judgments of chapter 16. Okay, all in all, chapters 15, 16, 17, and 18 deal with the bowl judgments, indicating the expansive and the final nature of God's wrath poured out through the bowls. This chapter right here, chapter 17, can be divided into 2 parts: the vision, verses 1 through 6, and the explanation of the vision, verses 7 through 18. So what I want to do is, just as we always do, just read the first 17 verses, the whole chapter, which will be 18 verses, and then go back and make some comments through the verses, okay? Verse 1, chapter 17. Then one of the 7 angels, let me put my glasses on. I don't like this. I even brought a different Bible to see if it would help, but it doesn't really help. Then one of the am I still on, Harlan? Because this has got to be recorded because people watch this. Am I still being recorded? Okay. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and said to me, Come, I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute who is seated on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality, and with the wine of whose sexual immorality the dwellers on earth have become drunk. Verse 3. And he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her sexual immorality. And on her forehead was written a name of mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of earth's abominations. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. When I saw her, I marveled greatly. But the angel said to me, Why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns that carries her. The beast that you saw was and is not, and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and go to destruction. And the dwellers on earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will marvel to see the beast, because it was, and it is not, and is to come. Verse 9, this calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. They are also 7 kings, 5 of whom have fallen. One is, the other has not yet come. And when he does come, he must remain only a little while. As for the beast that was and is not, it is an 8th, but it belongs to the 7. I'll tell you what. No wonder John was like, it's a marvel. And it goes to destruction. Verse 12. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power, but they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour together with the beast. These are of one mind, and they hand over their power and authority to the beast. They will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those who with him are called and chosen and faithful. Verse 15, and the angel said to me, the waters that you saw where the prostitute is seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and languages. And the 10 horns that you saw, they and the beast will hate the prostitute. They will make her desolate and naked and devour her flesh and burn her up with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to carry out this purpose by being of one mind and handing over their royal power to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. Last verse, and the woman that you saw is the great city that has dominion over the kings of the earth. Okay. On the surface, it may look really complicated, but it's really not. Okay, it's really not that mysterious. So I hope as we go through it, it'll become a little more clear if it's a little blurry to you at this point. In the first couple of verses, you see John says, then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came to me. It said, come, I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute. Your version may say harlot or some variation of that, who is seated on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality, and with the wine of whose sexual immorality the dwellers on the earth have become drunk. The great prostitute here is the world's religious system. Okay? It's false religion. It's what it is. It's the religious system that is going to unite the political kings, or the kingdoms, which are the 10 kings, and the unbelieving wicked and the nations of the world. When you get down to verse 15, the angel says that the many waters that the prostitute is sitting on, okay, he actually tells us very clearly who that is and what it is. It's the nations of the earth and the people of the earth, whose names have not been written, right? The wicked. But the idea here is that the great prostitute is the world's religious system. Now, when John sees, and when the angel talks about this sexual immorality, it's a reference to spiritual harlotry, okay, which is fundamentally idolatry. That's what's being talked about here, idolatry. Idolatry is frequently pictured as spiritual adultery in the Old Testament, or all throughout the Bible, actually. You remember I preached through the entire book of Hosea, and I actually got comments. It's like, Pastor, you're talking about sex all the time. And I'm like, well, no, I'm not. I'm just using the language of the Bible, because it called Gomer a whore, and she went out chasing her lovers, and she was a picture of unfaithful Israel, who had abandoned her first love, the Lord Yahweh, right? So this sexual immorality here is talking about the spiritual idolatry of this whole world. And I gave you this really good quote here by Jim Hamilton. It's a fantastic quote. He says this: the whole world owes allegiance, fidelity to God. The whole world should relate to God as a wife does to a husband in pure devotion. But the world has forgotten God, betrayed Him, and sold herself to anyone who will pay. The world is a whore. Every human government that does not honor Christ is prostituting itself to agendas and worldviews and national interests that are nothing but pimps and customers. That's pretty stiff. And he's absolutely right. And this happens through false religion. It's false religion. There's another quote there from John MacArthur. The world's people will be swept up into the intoxication and sin of a false system of religion. And that goes back to where the angel says that they're going to be drunk with, those who dwell on the earth are going to be drunk with the wine of her sexual immorality. False religion is a serious thing. It is a perversion of true religion. I think, Jamie, Will you, when y'all go to my office and tell that I got R.C. Sproul going in my office and I hear him back there. So let's go over there and tell that thing to stop, okay? Y'all don't hear that? Sorry. Probably be better to hear to him than me anyway. So well, I only hear, mostly. I think he's gone now. All right. So yeah, and this is not just something that we're going to see that's going to take place in the tribulation period. Okay, we see this now. False religions. Huh?
You see it when they're uncovering.
Yeah.
It's being exposed now. Right?
Yeah, they're being exposed. Yeah. Let's look at verses 3 to 6. Thank you, Calvin. And he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names. And it had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her sexual immorality. And on her forehead was written a name of mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of earth's abominations. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. Notice this is like, the second or third time we've seen that there's a drunkenness associated with this false religion. Now, what does that tell you? What's one of the characteristics of somebody who is drunk? Yeah, so they're staggering, slur their words. A drunken person, does their mind work right? No. Right? Huh? What? You can't remember, yeah.
They're under the influence of alcohol, but they're under the influence of false teaching.
Yeah, absolutely. And both, both will diminish your discernment. Okay. The faculties of your mind. You can't think straight. You can't. Mitchell, you was joking. You can't remember. Your mind doesn't work. That's why the New Testament calls us to be sober-minded. Right. That's not necessarily a call to like teetotal abstinence from alcohol. That's not what that is. It's a sober mindedness that comes from being grounded in Scripture, as opposed to the ideas of the world, right? So you can be sober. You can actually be sober-minded, or you can be drunk-minded and be sober, right? You know what I mean by that? You can have the mind of an intoxicated person and never have drank alcohol in your life. I think there's a lot of people like that.
We see it all the time.
Yeah.
I never thought about that. But I've never seen the level of hate like it is in the hate's terrible. In this country.
Yeah. Oh, the hate's out of control.
It's against anything that's good, any truth. It's basically it's against Christianity when it comes down to it.
Yeah. Because Christianity is not just true, it is the truth, right? So, I mention that because one of the characteristics of this false religion is is going to be characterized by a spiritual drunkenness, where there's zero discernment, zero sober-mindedness. Everybody's just in the party, right? And the whole world's going to fall for it. Where am I at? All right. So John, the image there that John sees of the beast with the on the beast, the lady on the beast with the 7 heads, and we're going to get to that later in verses 7 to 14, so I don't want to spend too much time there. But I do want you to notice that the appearance of the woman was beautiful, right? Her beauty was a cloak, however, for her abominations, much like the true nature of sin is cloaked by the promise of pleasure. All manner of sin is initially enticing but ultimately destructive. In the same way, false religion appeals, it's enticing, it appeals to man's fallen desire to justify himself, to save himself. But it only leads to damnation, not salvation. Okay? So you think, I was listening to a sermon today, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was John MacArthur, and he was talking about, he said the vast majority of the people on earth, including in his country, think they're going to get to heaven based on what he called religious credits. Okay? Spiritual credits, religious credits. That's a really creative way of saying good works. That's what that is. And
The only thing wrong with that is how much you have to do.
well, yeah, well, Jesus told us that much. He said, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you have no hope. And they had no hope. You've got to be perfect. Nobody can be perfect. But there is something in us that wants to justify ourselves. We want to have a part. You even see this even in the church still today. You have two ways of approaching salvation. It's either all of God, or you have people who say, well, I got to do something. I've got to do something, right? I have to do something. Those are dangerous words when it comes to your salvation. Those are dangerous words. Okay? Yeah. Why are those words dangerous?
Because we cannot earn our salvation. Only the blood of Christ has given us that.
Yeah,
We can't do anything for ourselves. We're hopeless.
that's right. Zero that we can do. Okay? And so there's this gut reaction. There's a knee-jerk reaction amongst a lot of Christians who says, yes, but you have to actually believe. Is that not doing something?
Yes.
So then you just contradict yourself then, Carol. Because you just said you can't do anything. But if you have to believe, then you have to do. But what does Ephesians chapter 2 tell us that faith is? It's a gift. You don't even do faith. Yes. The very fact that you can believe the gospel is not a work. It is not something you do. It is something you receive. It is a gift. Even your faith is a gift. And Paul goes on to say there in Ephesians 2, so that what? No man may boast. And false religion, at the end of the day, leads to self-boasting. I did this. That's why you see, all the Muslims, they hit the floor, certain times of the day facing, Mecca or wherever. Judaism, same difference. Okay, it's all the same. Even certain branches of Christianity. Roman Catholicism. It's a works-based religion. And it
See that all around the world.
yeah.
Europe is a perfect example of that. Now, I listened, Ben Beck was on program last night. Ben Beck's a pretty smart man. I
Yeah.
don't know if he's some say, I guess, is he a Mormon?
He is a Mormon, yes,
Okay, but
which
he's
is a
very
false
intelligent
religion.
guy.
Yeah.
And he said that if Europe didn't get their act together within the next 10 years, they would become Islamic.
Yeah, they're going to be a Muslim. Yeah, they're almost there now.
He says that we would have been there if we hadn't got the right man in office eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And he predicted this back in about 2009, I think it was, 2009 or
Yeah, well, the Quran prescribes a 3-step. Basically, I got it on my phone. I'll just read it to you right here. The 3 stages of jihad really is what it is, if I can find it. Well,
It's almost like history's repeating itself.
yeah. It is. It all. Well, it's escaping me at this moment. I thought it was a little sooner. Go back. Can't remember when I took
See,
this.
Europe is about completely done away with Christianity, the churches and all that.
Well, they're all compromised over there.
Yeah.
They're all compromised. Here it is. 3 phases. Phase number 1, when Muslims are few in number, they pull the victim card. They claim to be oppressed. They claim Islamophobia. Okay? And they themselves are more tolerant at that stage. Phase 2, when they have a large minority, then they become indignant. They become angry Muslims. They begin to threaten. They demand Sharia law, and they're intolerant of infidels. That would be like anybody that's not a Muslim. Phase 3, when they have a clear majority, that's when Islam becomes the dominant religion, not just religion, but the law of the land. They're militant, strict Sharia law, and they kill, subdue all infidels. For 1,400 years, this pattern has not changed. Moderates are irrelevant. So, yeah, the Quran prescribes that, actually, the 3 phases of jihad. You start out when you're a minority, you play the victim card, we just want to be, tolerated. Then when you get a small minority, but you're more vocal, then you start getting a little more aggressive. And then when the majority comes, then you take over, okay? England is on the brink of that right now. Okay. France, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we all know that Muslims have babies like way at a higher birth rate than anybody else. They don't have abortion. No, they don't have abortion. They don't have homosexuals. They don't,
Don't they teach, though, if you take your life, like killing infidels, you will go to heaven when you be 70?
paradise, yeah, if you die in jihad, yeah.
That's like sexual immorality in heaven, huh?
Yeah.
They're heaven anyway.
Yeah, there's always some perversion of this that's taken. But anyway, yeah. Okay, let's move on. Where were we at? Babylon the Great, verse 5. Babylon the Great. So what are we talking about here? Babylon the Great. Probably when the readers of Revelation would have got this, they would have immediately connected the dots to the city of Rome. Okay? Historical, no doubt, it would have been, that's the way they would have understood it. But it's more than just any historical city. Okay? What Babylon the Great represents, fundamentally, is man's attempt to be his own God. And we can trace this all the way back to the Tower of Babel in Genesis 10, which is why this phrase is there that calls Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes. This is where all of it started, right? Back at the Tower of Babel. The false religion is essentially, that was the birthplace of it. And God shut it down. But yet we're still trying to build that tower today. Right?
Well, we're trying to figure another way to get to heaven.
Yeah, that's
Other
yeah.
than through Jesus Christ. That's what
Yeah.
you're saying that we're building.
Yeah. We're trying to be our own God. That's what we're trying to do. That's what we've always been trying to do. That's actually the original temptation from the serpent to Eve was, hey, you can be like God. You can be wise like you can be your own God. Right? It's the same thing. You see there in verse 6, false religion hates Christ, hates his followers, even to the point of martyring them. Robert Mouse has a good quote here. I put it on, this is on the back page. Babylon the Great is that great system of godlessness that leads people away from the worship of God and to their own destruction. That's what it is. False religion, it's idolatry. The first of the 10 Commandments was to keep Israel from idolatry. And that's exactly what they repeatedly fell into. We still fall into it today.
No matter how beautiful she looks with the purples and the scarlets, in the end, she's still a prostitute.
Yeah.
They just made her look good. And that's what's happening in pulpits across the country now, is they're just making it look good, feel good, sound good.
Yeah.
And you see where those churches are going.
Yeah.
They're crippling Christianity.
Yeah. Yeah.
You remember me telling you about the Charisma?
Yeah, the Chrislam.
Runner guy?
Yeah.
Well, there's one in Fairmont Church, and my brother Mark went to visit with his daughter when she was living in Fairmont to see the babies. And he was in that church and did not know it was a Christian church. They had no, but what got his attention was there was no crosses. The name of Jesus Christ was not mentioned one time in the service. They didn't even worship the Lord like you would think. And then he was sitting with Karen's family, her brother-in-law, and he got an opportunity to talk to him while they were still there. And he says, well, Mark, did you know this is one of those Chrislam churches? And Mark did not know it, and we didn't know it even come that far. It started in California, was working its way. It's Muslim and Christianity blended. And that's what the Chrislam church is. And it was in Fairmont. This was like 5 years ago. So, I mean, I probably steer clear across the nation. Rick Warner, he was not really a pastor, but that's what his new title is. Was the one that created it. Rick Warner.
Warren?
Warner.
Warner.
Rick Warner.
I do know that Rick Warren, who actually was a pastor in California, Saddleback, yep, he was big on being friendly to the Muslims.
Well, could I have been told the wrong
I don't
thing?
know.
I don't know. It started in what? It started
I can't imagine him actually starting the Chrislam.
They call them Chrislam. Christian and Muslims.
But again, that's the kind of thing. So we see that right now. You see the bumper sticker that says coexist, right? All the little symbols of all the religions and all that stuff. And at this point, in the tribulation, what you're going to have is a emergence of a world religion. Actually, it's going to already been happen. Okay, this is kind of looking back again from a kind of a big picture view. What's been fascinating to me over the past 15 years in this country was we've gone from on the brink of majority atheism kind of deal, where atheism was, I'm not saying that the majority of our population was atheistic, I'm saying that atheism seemed to be the rule of the day, right? There is no God, you can't be in our school, can't have any of that stuff. In 15 years' time, we've gone from that to, on the brink of like a type of Christian nationalism. So what you have is the inability of no religion, right? This idea that there's no religion, it never works. Everywhere you find people, you find religion. We are a religious people. If we can't, even the atheists, they are religious people. Their God is themselves. They worship themselves. They worship, their own personal ambitions and drives and agendas. But every one of us We are a religious people. We are a worshiping people. This is why you find the children of Israel, while Moses was up on the mountain getting the law, and they on the way back down, Joshua was there and said, "I hear the sound of war." And Moses is like, no, this is the sound of party. So for that time, that 40 days, the children of Israel, who had just seen all these miraculous events by Yahweh coming out of Egypt, they had to have something to worship, tangible, they could see and touch. They couldn't even wait 40 days for the law of God to be given to them. We are there is a deep desire in every single one of us to be a worshiper. And we've seen that in our country. So now, it used to be not cool to be religious or a Christian, and now we're seeing this massive shift. And it's not just because of Trump either. I mean, this stuff was happening even before this election, okay? We're seeing a massive shift back to a religious society, a religious culture.
But God created us. He put that in us, that's the desire to worship Him.
Yeah.
It's in us.
Yeah, we're a creature. There's this creator-creature distinction. The creature always longs to see what made it. Okay? That's why Job can say, a couple chapters back in chapter 12, he was telling Zophar, he said, ask the beasts of the field. Ask the birds. Ask the fish. They'll all tell you that the hand of the Lord is... So even Job was saying, look, even creation itself knows that it is created and there's a creator. And that He's sovereign. He's providential over all things. So yeah, and Paul talks about this bizarre thing of atheism. In Romans chapter 1, we suppress the knowledge of God in unrighteousness. But we suppress it. It's there. It's in every single one of us. The knowledge of God is in every single one of us, but we suppress it in our unrighteousness. Charles Spurgeon, he said, it was funny, he said that atheism was a vice. He said atheism was a strange vice that even the devils didn't fall into. Right? Because James said that even the devils believe. Right? All the demons, they all know. When you find Jesus in the New Testament, in the Gospels, and encountering demon-possessed people, what do they say? We know who you are. Right? All right. Verse 7. Where are we at? Verse 7. Let me get these things back out. Let's pick up there at the last part of verse 6. John says, "When I saw her, I marveled greatly." I think about John. His head's got to be spinning, right? After all these things he's seen. No wonder he was probably on this island just by himself when he was seeing this, right? I saw her, I marveled greatly. But the angel said to me, "Why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast with the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast you saw was and is not and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and go to destruction." All right, so the beast, obviously, here's the Antichrist. His reference, we meet him first in chapter 13. The phrase was and is not and is about to rise, obviously, is a reference to his death or his alleged apparent death and his subsequent resurrection. Okay, remember his mortal wound, and he's going to be raised back. Okay, the phrase "rise from the abyss" is possibly a reference to a powerful demonic possession of the Antichrist after his alleged resurrection. You know, you would think that the Antichrist would have been possessed from the word "go," and maybe so. But you remember, there are some demonic spirits who are imprisoned even now, that are not free to roam the earth. In the realm of the demonic, there's not an equality of demons. Okay? They're not all equally evil. Right? Because you remember when Jesus healed that the demon-possessed man, and he said, now if he, if what's going to happen is this demon, this spirit, is going to leave and go get 7 of his buddies, more evil than him, is what Jesus said. More evil. This is in the Gospel of Luke. I can't remember what chapter. He's going to go get 7 more of his buddies, more evil than him. They're going to come back and find the place swept and clean, and then the end of the guy is going to be he's going to be worse than ever, right? So there is a spectrum of evil even among demons. So this resurrected Antichrist that's going to rise from the abyss. I mean, I think it's John MacArthur. Actually, I was reading him when he said this. Is probably a reference to a very powerful demon that's going to possess this guy after his resurrection, which makes sense because then and this is the next in your notes here, the deceptive power of the Antichrist and his false world religion will be so expansive that only the elect will be preserved. Okay? Matthew 24:24, Jesus said this. He said, matter of fact, let's turn there. Matthew 24. Verse 24. Jesus says, for false Christ and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders, so as to lead astray, if possible, even the elect. Now that says a couple of different things. Number one, it says that the elect is not possible for them to be led astray. Okay, now this is important for us to understand. If you are truly born again, you are not going to be led astray, even in the present. This is why when you see Christians, professing Christians, who appear to be a Christian for a while, and then they fall victim to some false religion, well, they prove right there that their salvation was never really genuine. Okay? Because when Jesus said, if possible, even the elect, the implication, that means that it's not possible for the elect to be deceived. Right? So that's one thing that it says. The second thing that Jesus is saying there is that the deception on the earth during this time is going to be, it's going to be unbelievable. It is going to be unbelievable. And y'all, I want to really caution you on this. Because when we think of deception as Christians, we look at like Islam and even Judaism. We look at Hinduism. We look at all these other religions, and we say, "Oh, that's false religion." The real deception is when it looks so much like the real thing that you can't tell. Okay? That's what makes it so dangerous. That's why Jesus said it's only the elect are going to survive this. It's easy for us to look at, witchcraft and see the false stuff there. But what about the stuff that looks so much like Christianity? Right? The language is all the same. You go in and even the worship looks the same. It's all remember, the woman was dressed in purple, gold. She's beautiful, enticing. It looks safe. It looks glorious. Well, I don't know. What you got, Mitch?
Maybe he thought, well, how could this evil have lasted this long?
Yeah, I mean, how could yeah, I mean, the depth of our ability to be deceived is astonishing at times. We fall for the same lies, same tricks over and over and over.
Well, you can tell if you're drifting away from the cross.
Yes. That is key.
right there is the,
Yeah.
is the main thing. And you've got to stick to that cross.
Yeah.
And that's your hope. And your faith is in all of that, because
Yeah.
once you stray away from that, then you think about this other stuff, you know. If somebody comes up to you and they're a good person and everything, and you say, well, I don't know about this cross business, you know. I believe, you know right there,
Yeah. Yeah.
this person has got a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anytime you doubt what Jesus Christ done on that cross, you're setting yourself up for a fall.
Yeah. That's why Paul said, I know nothing except Christ crucified.
That's right.
Spurgeon, he told his students, he said, no Christ in your sermon, then don't preach again until you have something worth preaching. And you listen to a lot of sermons, and I used to be guilty of this. I remember when I first started preaching, I don't know, it's been probably on a regular basis, maybe 12 years ago. I'd send my sermons out to people that I trusted, and I'd say, give me a review. How can I? And one of them came back and said, you didn't preach Christ. And it was from 1 Corinthians chapter 7. And it was a sermon on, it was actually a sermon on marital relations. Okay? If you read 1 Corinthians 7, you'll understand. But he says, you didn't preach Christ. And that has always stuck with me. And that's why, even if you teach Sunday school lessons, or lead devotions, or anything you do, you've got to find Christ in what you're teaching. He's got to be there somewhere. He is there. You might have to dig a little bit, especially like going through this Job stuff, the Old Testament. There's no explicit mention of Christ in any of that, but He's there everywhere, right? I hope you've been able to see that. If you don't, and I'm not just talking about preaching your message or teaching your lesson and then giving the, God so loved the world thing at the end of the year. That's not what I'm talking about. Christ has to be in and over and under and all in your message in some way or another. All of it has to point back to Him and our need of Him. And when you listen to a sermon in a church, and you go to a church, one of the things you can do is if you're visiting a new church, which I hope nobody's here is going to be doing, but if you're visiting a new church for some reason, and you listen to those messages and give them 4 or 5 weeks, and if there's no Christ in those messages, then that's dangerous. It's dangerous. What you're going to have there is works religion, moralism. This is the how-to, be a Christian kind of thing. All right, let's get to verse 9 and 10. I think I got all that. Yeah, verse 9. This calls for a mind with wisdom. So even the angel tells John, he says, look, you got to really think about this. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman was seated. They are also 7 kings, 5 of whom have fallen, and one is, the other has not yet come. And when he does come, he must remain only a little bit. So, again, some strange language, but the 7 kings are representatives of the 7 great world empires. I put them in your notes. Egyptian Empire, the Syrians, Babylonians, the Medo-Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, and then finally that of the Antichrist. Those are the 7 great world empires. The phrase 5 of whom have fallen, one is, the other has not yet come, refers to the empires that did not exist at the time of John when he was writing this. Those would be the Egyptian, Assyrian, Babylonian, Medo-Persian, and Greek. Those 5 were already gone. Okay? The Roman Empire still existed. The Antichrist Empire was yet to come. Y'all see that? Okay? I hope that makes sense. But when the Antichrist kingdom does come, or his empire does come, it will be brief. That's what that phrase, only a little while. Right? In verse 10, it says, he must remain only a little while. So his empire is going to be short-lived, the Antichrist. Any questions on that? Is it like, okay. It's not that difficult to understand once you kind of connect the dots. Verse 11 through 14. As for the beast, of course that's the Antichrist, that was and is not, it is an eighth. But it belongs to the seven. And it goes to destruction. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power, but they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour, together with the beast. These are of one mind, and they hand over their power and authority to the beast. They will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those with him are called and chosen and faithful. So what about this strange phrase, the beast which is an eighth but belongs to the seven? That's almost like a kind of trying to figure out a Rubik's Cube kind of deal. Well, here's what it is. Basically, it's referring to the Antichrist in his pre and post I can't say resurrected, right? So he had this, whether it's a genuine resurrection or whether it's faked or whatever. I don't know. There's different debates on that. But when the Antichrist is killed, he's raised. So his pre-death would be, he would be the seventh. And then in his post, after his resurrection, he's actually going to turn on the one world religion that he was the head of and demand total allegiance to himself at that point. So he's going to basically be the world religion, himself. As far as the 10 kings go, we don't know who they are. At least I don't know who they are. You can probably find somebody on YouTube who can give you all kinds of names, but I wouldn't believe them. They will apparently be part of the Antichrist dominion as sub-rulers. Okay, their power will be limited and brief for 1 hour. Again, that's not 60 minutes. The point of that is to say that their reign, their co-reign, their sub-reign with the Antichrist is going to be limited and short. Limited and short. The Antichrist and his subservient kings will war against the Lamb. That's a reference to the Battle of Armageddon, 16:14. Okay. Now, in that next verse, it's actually the same verse. Interesting. They will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those with him are called and chosen and faithful. Those three words right there are pretty important words. I would encourage you to circle them and to keep them in your mind even outside of the context of this book. They really have some pretty important doctrinal implications in themselves. You think about being called, you think about what we call the doctrine of effectual calling. Chosen. Okay, the Greek word in your translation, actually, where mine says, the ESV says chosen, yours may say elect. Okay, it's actually from the same Greek word, elect and chosen. Then you have faithful. So you have effectual calling, unconditional election, and perseverance of the saints. Three important doctrines packed right into there into one little verse. And all three of these terms are frequently used in the New Testament to refer to God's people. Okay, and I've given you two verses for each one of them. 1 Corinthians 1, Jude 1, both of those places called the people of God the called, like the called, not just like, hey, somebody called me on the phone. No. We are the called ones. This is the idea behind the language here. In Colossians 3 and 1 Peter 2:9, we are the chosen ones, the elect ones. Okay? In Ephesians 1:1 and Colossians 1:2, we are the faithful ones, the ones who endure, the ones who persevere. That's some good stuff right there. Verses 15 to 18. And the angel said to me, the waters that you saw where the prostitute is seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and languages. That's pretty clear, right? And the 10 horns that you saw, they and the beast will hate the prostitute. They will make her desolate and naked and devour her flesh and burn her up with fire. Let's just stop there. So what we're going to have here is a mutiny in the false religion, right? And it's going to be a top-down mutiny. The Antichrist and his entourage are going to flip the whole thing around. They're going to turn on the world's false religion. Again, John MacArthur is so helpful here. He says this, after using the false religious system to unify the world's kingdoms and gain control of all, the Antichrist, with the help of his 10 sub-rulers, will turn against the system, plunder and destroy it, and seize all power and worship for himself. They will be carrying out God's will. Now that's why I left off verse 17. It says right in verse 17, for God has put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose. Well, that's an amazing statement if you think about the implications there. Okay? This kind of harkens back to when God hardened the heart of Pharaoh. Right? This is an expression of God's sovereignty. This actually takes us back to when the children of Israel were there, and they conquered those two nations. What was those two nations? It was the Amorites. Og, king's name was Og, and what was the other one's name? That's it. And it says this specifically of Og, that God turned his heart against them. Right? What does Proverbs say? The heart of the king is in the hand of the Lord. He turns it however he wills. This is another issue that we often have problems with and struggle with. We have great difficulty with it. Why would God do this? Why would God put it in their mind, the hearts, to carry out his purpose? He's basically ordaining their own sin. That's what he's doing. We go back to Romans 9 where Paul says, can the clay say to the potter, why have you made me this way? Right? At the end of the day, these texts are in the Bible. We can't do hermeneutical gymnastics to try to make them say something they don't say. They say what they say. God put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose. His purpose was that they actually sin. That's what you connect the dots here, right? But yet, we know that God cannot be charged with sin. I've made mention of this a few times in the study on Job. We talk about primary causes and secondary causes, right? So God was ultimately responsible for what happened to Job, but Satan was the one who actually did it, right? Yet it was God's sovereign plan and purpose. Same thing's happening here. All this is unfolding according to his plan. Thus, the end of the verse says, until the words of God are fulfilled. But there's something else we need to see about this turn of the Antichrist. I put in your notes there, sin and rebellion against God is ultimately self-devouring. We see this right now in our country. It's happening right now in our country. We see the Democrat Party devouring itself, turning in on itself. Right? So this is not just something that just happens in the world of false religion. anything else, but the point is that anything that is rebellion against God will ultimately cannibalize itself. That's what it's fundamentally self-destructing. Sin is the most insane thing on planet Earth because it is self-destructing. Yeah.
If someone, I can never, if you're doing something that's absolutely wrong, and, you know, there's people that you would consider pretty intelligent people, but they continue to do it, and if they just look down the road, where's this go get me? That's what, it's destruction.
I saw something yesterday and it said we were watching in real time the wheat and the tares be separated.
Yeah. And that kind of tells you we got to be pretty close, you know, to that great reaping, that great harvest. The last verse there talks about the great city, most likely a reference to Babylon, which, remember, at this time did not exist. It was already destroyed. So probably what John is seeing there is a future manifestation of Babylon. Babylon and Rome are the same. It's the same idea. It's the spirit of Antichrist that rules. I think the actual name of the physical geographical place is not so much important as the spirit that is ruling there, right? Big idea, another good quote from Jim Hamilton. He says, we need to be convinced that it is better to live for the Lamb than the beast, with the pure bride than with the nasty whore, for eternal things rather than the temporary, to please God and not enrage Him, to enter His city rather than being thrown into the lake of fire. So, with this emergence of Babylon, it's not coincidental that's here at the end of Revelation, because there's another city that we see emerge in Revelation, isn't it? Isn't there? The New Jerusalem, right? So right here at the end of Revelation, you start to see this distinction between Babylon and New Jerusalem. The world system, and truth. Okay? The way to God, the way to life. If you go to the next chapter, which we will next week, we're going to see Babylon fall. At least in a different way than what we saw tonight. Any questions or comments? There's a tremendous amount in this chapter. I would encourage you to go back over it and reread and study, these things.